Welcome to a very special episode of the Undiscovered Metric. Today I'm joined by not one, but two guests from LV. I'm joined by Paul Mabb, Marketing Analytics Manager, and Debra Kaye, Senior Digital Analyst. Today we're talking all things data. We're talking about how you can bridge the gap between marketers and data analysts, why data analysts need celebrating, and why it's important to contextualize your data rather than just giving a big number. I'll start off with you, Debra. A lot has been made of the gaps between the digital analysts and the marketing analysts and how they work together. Some say that they are potentially in silo, but I'd be really interested in how your working relationship with Paul has developed and how your team operates into making sure that we have the insights that you need to run successful campaigns.
So I think Paul and I complement each other really well. So Paul has skills so Paul's very good on Adverity. Yep. So he might do a lot of the dashboard building, and then some of my skills complement Paul's skills. So we might talk about how the campaign looks and put heads together afterwards. But we also very embedded in the performance marketing team. So we talk a lot to our colleagues in performance marketing, and they actually do a lot of their performance monitoring, and then we put our heads together and discuss how the campaign's gone.
And with that performance marketing, do you come across as both of you as sort of one voice, or are there still sort of some areas that you both sort of provide a different point of view on to challenge those guys as well?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Debra's got kind of her entry into the field's been a lot more traditional for analysis and data. So Debra is good at sense checking, pulling out the anomalies. She's more good at the, not so much the traditional, but more the hard data side of it. Okay, well, has this been considered? Let's dive into the numbers a bit deeper. Where I've come from a more creative angle, so I've gone create the content first, analyze it afterwards. And that's where I think we complement. Where I, like Debra said, dashboard building, report building, the storytelling. Right, we have the data now. How do we relay it back? So it's almost like if you think of the creativity of creating stories, creating dashboards, the visualization, getting the diamonds out of the coal is a phrase I often use, is that we've had to go through 1,000 lumps of coal and no one wants to be taken through them again. If you've only got 2 diamonds, just tell them about the 2 diamonds. I'll come from that. If you want to look at it as top down or left or right, and Debra comes from the other angle, and that's where we meet in the middle.
You can be creative in your use of data. I think sometimes in the industry, we talk about creative and we only think about the output, but actually don't think about how people have sort of interpreted things in creative ways and thinking differently, and looking at that data in a very creative way to boost performance and find, as you say, diamonds in the rough that you may not necessarily have seen without having that data analysis done.
Yeah. So I think maybe looking under the hood a little bit, kind of trying to read in and coming up with hypotheses, and then either proving them or disproving them.
And what's the biggest challenges you've had, and what have been the barriers to getting to where you guys are today when it comes to the sort of analysis of data? And is it just collating it? Is it having it all in a single source of truth, or have there been other sort of areas that have been barriers to this entry of success?
So Paul's very good at drawing all the data together using Adverity, so having it all in one place. And that makes it easier for the rest of the team to keep track of, performance and performance of campaigns.
Yeah, I think the biggest, well, we've had a few. Cookieless is one and still ongoing. Is the how do we bridge the gap now between what we no longer have through third-party deprecation and using our first-party data efficiently. Now, people get the idea of it, but it will cost money. Whatever solution we use, whether that be a multi-touch attribution solution, cookieless AI, whatever it is, it will cost money.
Yeah.
And companies, especially conservative ones, are risk averse, especially with spending money that you can't outwardly prove straight away until you actually spend it. Whereas with more traditional mediums like above the line, say TV, radio, we can go to our econometrics agency. We've got media mix models that will say, if you spend this, these are your diminishing returns, and this will be your ROI. It's proven, it's tested, we can do it. With things like multi-touch attribution, for us, it's in its infancy, and that's a lot harder to prove. So buy-in would be one. New technology and getting that onboarded is another, and bridging the gap between above the line and below the line to see what the true halo effect of things like TV, which is and will always be our biggest media channel, and has the biggest budget. So it will be good to know what the lasting effects are on other channels from things like TV and radio.
How do you then identify sort of key metrics as a team to report on success?
It depends very much on the campaign. So some campaigns are just about brand awareness.
Yep.
And then some campaigns we would look at engagement metrics, but we look at a sort of standard set of metrics, really. So we would look at sessions, and then our start quote journeys, depending on the product. So we would look at start quote, and sale, and then we look at our conversion rates. So start quote rate, and quote to sale conversion. So those are our most important metrics, and we quite consistently measure those.
Are there any metrics that you think are missing from these campaigns? Are there any metrics you would like to redefine in terms of what they actually mean and how they impact your business?
I'd love to get more metrics around incremental uplifts and just have more around experimentation, so we can see, yes, we know what a campaign did, we've got an uplift, say in quotes or sales, and our CPAs have gone down. That's great, but we've got so many other factors like market, the cost of motor vehicles, insurance, cost of living, and these have another effect that come outside of price.
Yep.
Where price is one of our most sensitive factors in terms of conversion. But if we knew what we were doing had an effect, and also if we didn't do it, what would have happened, I think that would be really useful. So almost like a negative marketing spend. So yes, this is what you got when you spent this, but if you didn't spend it, this is what would have happened.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, I think fear selling can work a lot more successfully, especially when you're putting numbers up the chain, than success selling. So if we turn around and say, oh, we spent this is what we got back. Marketing is always the poor cousin that gets their budget cut first. So people can say, oh, well, if you've done that with this, we can take a bit away, and you should still be able to do that, not knowing that your spend places you at a certain point in market share. And to lose that and get it back again means you have to spend 2-3 times as much just to get back to where you were already. So for me, it would be almost like negative metrics. If you don't do something, this is what you get.
And have you found, since you've moved to a more unified data approach, that those conversations have been easier with sort of reporting up the chain and saying, actually, we can show, it's easier for us to show direct impact of our performance, of our campaigns than necessarily it was before?
Definitely easier than it was before. Not where we need to be, but yeah, it is easier because we work a lot closer with channel heads, which makes it easier for us to have an understanding of the data, and also the impact of it, but also to get everyone together, how to have conversations with our econometrics agency, with anyone where we're trying to develop attribution, and other third parties.
And that unified view, and as you said, there's still work to be done. What are the sort of challenges that sort of you open your email on a Monday morning and go, right, this is something we need to solve in the short term. This is something that's going to be a medium-term problem. Are there any sort of big things that sort of keep you up at night at the moment when it comes to that sort of unified data view, or is it more actually we're on the right track and we just need to keep pushing through?
I think we're on the right track, definitely. And you know, Debra's done a lot of work in terms of laying groundwork to future success that neither of us may not see. But I'm thinking of things like implementing CAPI, SST, consent mode version 2, and these are things that people beyond myself and Debra may not really understand, but not doing them is going to cause serious problems down the line. So I would say I think we're in a good place going forward.
Yeah, I think so. So we have a cookieless strategy, and we kind of keep that up to date and work through it. So hopefully we carry on doing that into the future.
It'd be amazing to hear about sort of some of the things that Paul's just alluded to and sort of the work that you've been doing. And it sounds a little bit uncelebrated, but essential work.
Yeah, so I think it's about keeping on top of how the industry is moving, and then just so having a view of what those things are, what's going to make a difference, and then working through them fairly consistently.
Are there things that sort of are on that board that are getting closer and closer, as well as cookieless, that you're thinking, right, this is something that we need to now prioritize for sort of 2024, 2025 in our data strategy?
Yes, I think the one thing we're working on at the moment is implementing enhanced conversions on our Google floodlight tracking. So yeah, and that's in anticipation for Google implementing their deprecation of third-party cookies.
How does your typical week look for both of you? Obviously, from a marketing and then a digital analyst side, I'd love to understand that sort of working dynamic between the analyst and the marketer.
We're always in contact. We're always looking at things. If one of us is thinking something, the other one is usually thinking the same.
It sounds like you guys are two sides of the same coin, because a lot of research we've done over the last couple of years say that there's still a big gap between the marketers and the data analysts. But actually, from the conversation we're having today, the success that you guys are having is because you're so collaborative and working so closely together. And it would almost be running through mud if one of you sort of that role wasn't there. That's a really key learning of you really need to bring those teams closer together to get real success. The data analysts still feel left out in the cold a little bit, and they're operating in silo to the marketing team. But with the data being so important and essential for marketers, how do we make sure that we bridge that gap? You two are a very good example of how it is successful. But what are the steps that other teams could potentially take to make sure that gap is narrowed?
Spend time with channel heads, spend time with people in marketing. It's the only way. Sit down with them, look at what they do, see how they do campaigns, understand the numbers. Like things like TV is a prime example. Things like TVR, Barb data, without talking to the people that deal with their side of the job every single day, they'll never know you as well as they could. One, you'll never understand the numbers as well as you can, because understanding that, we all know numbers, that's fine. We get how they work. Within reason, we know how the business works.
Yeah.
Most people as an analyst could go into any business and tell them high level what needs to be done. It's understanding that granularity and the fine mechanisms behind those numbers, especially things above the line data. TV data is really complex. I didn't understand it. It took me a while to get my head around it. Yeah. But yeah, definitely spending time regularly and getting them to do the same. They'll just think, analysts, you just mess about with numbers and make dashboards and you do a few clicks and your job is done and you go home. getting them to see how complex things are and how hard it is to bring multiple data sources together. Also gives them, it manages their expectations as well. But yeah, that would be my recommendation.
I think we've had really good success getting people to self-serve. So we're all using the same pool of data, and by talking about it, and as Paul says, meeting people and talking about the data, we all have a common understanding. So it feels like we're part of one big team.
Does that culture need to start from the top down and say, right, we are now going to be more focused on our data. We're bringing everyone together. This is how everyone fits into the puzzle.
It helps if you have a love for the job,
yeah,
at whatever level you are, you can advocate for it. So like Debra and I both, we call it like, we've done the grunt work around data, where we, you know, everyone's done data entry in spreadsheets. When you start at that level and then you go up, you have a love for the craft itself, and then it's much easier to advocate for it. So I think it's two-pronged. It's one where I mentioned earlier, if you don't do these things where we've analyzed, this is what's going to happen potentially, and this is based on past performance. But also, when we did do this thing, or we did action what came out of an experiment, this was what came back. This was the improvements in ROI. This was the reduction in CPAs. And then it makes it a lot easier. It's almost like reputation buy-in. The more you can prove that the decisions you make based on data have a positive impact on business, the next time round, it's a lot easier to get buy-in from people based on your own reputation.
So I agree with Paul. I think for us, it sort of started in the middle and we've kind of gone outwards. It wasn't from the top down, but I think maybe it was the realization in the team that we all needed to play a part.
If I gave you a blank piece of paper and said, please go and build me a successful team, what are the skill sets that you guys are really looking at now? Is it curiosity? Is it sort of creativity, or is it sort of able to think left field? Where would you guys start with that?
I would say you need the core. So you need the core skills. So good with numbers, but not, you don't have to be a mathematician or anything. It's about recognizing trends and anomalies is more important. But I would say, yes, definitely curiosity and not being afraid to try something new. I mean, Debra and I both, we've made up our own metrics based on combinations of different metrics. Debra's done work with the data team, taking first party data as a basis to come up with a score. It's like a customer score that gets sent through the G-cleared, and then that gets sent back for targeting valuable customers. And because we're always asked to go after different things, so sometimes it might be volume of sales and other times it might be profitability. That requires, you know, different metrics to look at. We're no longer looking at pure volume. It's combinations of likelihood to claim, age, all of those things. They're given markers, and we have to take those numbers and then decide how we're going to score this ourselves. So it's about not having a fear to make up new metrics. Now, as long as they're consistent and the business knows about them, there shouldn't be a fear to do it. And it's those ideas that myself and Debra both nurture, and creativity is really key. So yeah, definitely being creative and thinking without using the term we all love to hate, thinking outside the box.
And just to add one thing, so I think in the future, possibly analysts may use more machine learning. So maybe some sort of data science skills.
Are you excited about the future of sort of AI and machine learning, or is it something that sort of we haven't cracked yet? And I think we're just very much at the tip of the iceberg before we can get really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So I see us moving from a place where the tools have more AI built in, which then can allow us to do like greater things, more interesting and creative things with our data.
I think we're at the precipice of the next revolution. You know, I don't know what it would be, fourth, fifth industrial revolution. I think we are there. I think AI can help remove a lot of the mundane elements of our job where we have to do things by hand in spreadsheets. Luckily, we don't have to do it often anymore, but when we do, I think AI can pick that and we can have more of a focus on insight delivery and storytelling, which we're both big advocates for. And just to touch on your previous question, another skill that I would love is the ability to tell a good story around numbers. Because if you can get that right, the numbers stick in people's heads and they will carry it forward. And when I was learning about it, one of the things I was taught is always quantify your numbers. If you've got big numbers, they will just go over people's heads. But if you say something like that is the equivalent, if you were to assign that number to a mobile phone and lay all the phones out, they would go around the world 4 times. People will remember that, but they won't remember 14,700,000, whatever it is. They're not going to remember that, but they will remember any anecdote that you put around it and jokes. And that is a skill, and it's something that I think people should constantly practice and refine. And just because, you know, you're in analytics, it doesn't mean that we're stuck behind desks in a corner in an attic. I mean, I am actually in an attic at the moment, but it doesn't mean that that's what we do and we don't interact with people. We do. We've got varying backgrounds and we have a lot of creativity. And I think to push that side of it, I think a lot of people have a misconception about the role, is that you're just like a data geek and you don't get to talk to people and there's no interactions. I mean, JJ, look at some of the events that we've met at.
Yeah.
You know, analysts, we know how to party and we know how to party hard. So there is a big creative element that I think gets missed. And I think if it was advocated more, we would get a nice spread and influx of different ideas and creativities.
It is really exciting. And I think sometimes we forget just how impactful your teams are as an industry, and actually giving marketers more robust answers to difficult questions at a board level, which I think is really important, and showing the impact that it has on the wider business and should be celebrated.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And also laying the infrastructure for those numbers to be obtained, you know, installed in things like GA, like Adobe, tagging, SST, all of that. Without those things, and there is, when you mentioned earlier about not being celebrated, a lot of the things that we've implemented is to maintain business as usual. But because business as usual is maintained, people don't recognize it. It's like, oh, okay, it's still reporting, fine. But it's only reporting because 8 months ago, we knew this thing was coming down the road where all your numbers were about to disappear. So we installed something like Cappy to make sure it didn't happen, or there was at least some modeling around it.
And I think we alluded to this at the beginning of the conversation. Is foresight another good skill set to be able to bring to the table, or just understanding where the wind's going to blow rather than where it's blowing at the time?
So I think it's really important that all of us keep up to date with legislation, see the way things are going. I don't necessarily think it's a skill to be able to do that. I think you've just got to keep reading and keep up with the way industry's going.
Where are you looking for that to stay one step ahead? Where are the places that you're seeking information and reading, whether it's a podcast recommendation or a magazine or even a book recommendation? Where would you point people to go if they want to go and make sure that they are as future looking as you guys are?
The basic one is it's a Google search. So what is the upcoming tech legislations, and you know, long query searches, things like what do I need to know for this year as a digital marketer? First port of call, that's if you've got no money, you can't spend things on third parties. Second would be your third party partners. Go to them, have conversations with them, meet up with them, people like Station 10, Insighten, whoever they are. You know, if you use Adobe, you'll have a account manager somewhere along the line. Talk to them. They'll have other clients who are going through exactly the same thing as you. Have a conversation, meet up with them. They'll never say no, and they always really love talking to their clients. The other one would be things like e-consultancy, CACI, e-consultancy. They put out some great white papers, and they're all categorized into specific areas like future-proofing, like cookieless. Just go and read, and they'll break everything down, and you know, reach out on LinkedIn, look at what people are saying. Often they'll drop articles that will just break things down, bite-sized info, and then from the back of those, you can say, okay, this is really interesting. I've got a question here. Let me go back to either the person that posted it. I mean, as people in data, as people in technology, we love answering questions. Don't be afraid to reach out, network. So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
So I'll just add one more thing. So I think getting out to events.
Yep.
So there's plenty of events that are talking about hot topics, and just going out and talking to other people in industry, in different industries, and gives you a lot, you know, a lot of insight into what's going on.
Yeah, a lot of them are free as well. Things like big data, they're all free, and you know, why not? You're going to meet like-minded people, and the knowledge sharing aspect. So I've got a confession to make. I never used to like going to networking events. I couldn't stand them, and it was actually Debra that got me started to go to them. And to be fair, it was probably the best decision I ever made in terms of knowledge sharing and just getting out there and meeting people in the industry.
Paul, Debra, thank you so much for your time. I think it's an absolutely fascinating world, and the job that you guys are doing is incredible. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.